On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to the Life Science Success Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don. I'm a consultant in the life sciences. I help clients manage complexity and increase performance. Before we get started in the interview today, I wanted to just quickly mention there is a free OKR course that's out on my website. You go to www.5280lsc.com and you can get a free ultimate guide to OKRs as well as a way to implement them into your organization. With that, let's jump right into the podcast. My guest is Donna Lavoie. Donna is the founder of LaVoieHealthScience, a leading health and science integrated communications firm and a leader of specialized thinkers in health and science marketing, a proven strategic communications executive in biotechnology, healthcare, medical device, and pharma fields. Additionally, she's a CXO counselor on strategic communications issues. Welcome, Donna.
Good morning. How are you today? It's an early one.
Yes. And I mean, that's a good mention. This one will go out later for other people, but we are up early. For sure early. So welcome. Can you tell listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Donna Lavoie. I'm president and CEO of LaVoieHealthScience, which is a innovative company working with strategic communications for life sciences, biotech, medtech companies.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because whenever I read the name at first, I was like, do they do biostatistics or anything else? And then whenever I saw integrated communications, this is so important. And I think it's going to be a great topic for everybody as well in terms of the podcast, because of, so many of the scientists that I talk to all the time are brilliant, but they need a little bit of help with regards to communications and getting the word out about the things that they're trying to focus in on. So
absolutely. And that's the premise for which we were founded.
Oh, okay. So can you tell us just a little bit more about who your clients are at LaVoieHealthScience?
Absolutely. So we have three types of clients at LHS. We have our earlier stage companies, or company launches, if you will. And those are companies with funding out of venture or spinning out from another company. And those are companies that we're working with management teams to directly launch into the marketplace. So that's one set of clients. And the second set of clients is what I call small cap biotech, which are companies with a certain amount of funding. They might be public already. As we know, the last 2 years, certainly not this year, but the last 2 years, we had an unprecedented number of IPOs. So we have more companies than we know what to do with right now in that category. And those companies need a lot of help. They may have gone public very early and weren't really ready to be in the public markets from a communication standpoint. So we have a number of those types of clients. And then we have what we call our mid-cap or commercially stage ready companies. And those companies are a little further along. They may be either getting ready to enter a commercial phase, or they're going through an FDA approval. And some of those companies continue on in their own life, and some actually get acquired.
So I think you touched on a couple of things that I'd like to go a little bit deeper on. So with regards to like how people engage you, do they normally like come to your firm and then just stay with it because communications is kind of a natural thing that every company needs to do, or they kind of come in and go out?
Well, I think it depends, right? So, LaVoieHealthScience has been in business 21 years this year. We just celebrated, or we are celebrating, our anniversary in the month of September.
Congratulations.
So you can imagine, thank you. So you can imagine that we've worked with a lot of companies along the way. And certainly, these companies are not the Pfizers of the world
Mhm.
necessarily, where you may be, working with them and move from division to division. So how I like to explain it to people is, these are mid-market companies. Some are by design naturally going to be acquired and into a larger company, or they're going to acquire other companies and other assets. So hence that means, sometimes they're clients for a long time, but the people are clients, not necessarily the companies, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, earlier on, I think it's so important as well. And then my follow-on question is, when companies come to you um, initially,
Yeah,
do they oftentimes then also come back as they grow? Because I mean, a lot of the companies that I'm focused in on are those small to mid-sized companies as well, and it feels like, I mean, whenever I initially get engaged, oftentimes you have either a chief scientific officer or the COO is doing all of the presenting, and it's from a scientific standpoint.
right,
And then as they sort of, migrate, I mean, it becomes more and more important that they can communicate more or less in the public eye, right? And
right.
be out there and out front.
Right. No, we've had a number of companies that, we may have launched, for example, take a company like Forge Biologics. We actually launched them out of Perceptive, the fund Perceptive, the Perceptive 5 fund with Zontogeny. And, they continued to be a client. So they actually came back to us just this week or last week, and we helped them with an announcement on a new service line that they are offering to their clients in the gene therapy space. So we do see that happen, and it just depends on the client for sure and their needs.
Very good. And I took a little bit of a look both at your bio as well as the web page, and it kind of mentions a few things that oftentimes you normally support. And I just wanted to try and touch on a few of these. So
Sure.
strategy consulting, investor relations, and then public relations. So maybe we just start with strategy consulting. How do you help companies there?
Great. So the strategy consulting part of the practice is actually key to our differentiating factors at Lavoie. And so within that practice, we have two trademark methodologies. In fact, just this year, we announced this, I think in July or August, that the patent office has, or the trademark office has extended our trademark for another several years. So we were very, very excited about that. And those methodologies, the first one is LHS immersion, which is our methodology for positioning and messaging. And this is a product, if you will, that we deploy over a 4 to 6 week process or period. And it really delves into the competitive differentiators, the SWOT analysis, message pillars, blueprint plan, timeline, and it really sets the company up for success as they move into a monthly program. So that is a key service line in our strategy consulting practice. The second one, which you may have heard about, is the 15 slides presentation. It's how to tell your company story in just 15 slides. And that
Nice.
is a methodology for which I speak often. In fact, I was at Bio in June in San Diego, and it was my 13th year doing that talk.
Wow.
So that is another product that we deploy to our clients through the strategy consulting practice. And
Well,
so
yeah,
as things have moved along, we've trained and continue to train our executive team and support team on those two methodologies. And those are sort of key to set, like I said, to setting the company up for success from an execution standpoint, whether that be PR or IR or digital.
So if I kind of rewind the clock a little bit on your 13 years of presenting at Bio, and you just said 21-year anniversary. So this, I mean, the culmination of sort of, being able to tell a strong story is so important. And it sounds to me like, this is one of the foundational things too that you've sort of brought along with your company, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is very exciting, and I will say, in this world of differentiating for key talent, the team really loves getting involved with the strategic approach, and it's not just about flipping over press releases and doing media monitoring, which is certainly part of the job. Don't get me wrong, but it's the ability to really get involved in these companies to really understand what makes them tick and why they're different. Take companies in oncology. It's pretty difficult today to tell the difference between, the array of companies in that particular area.
Yeah. And yet so important, and important to have somebody as well as a way to tell that story, as both are important. So in terms of investor relations and public relations, let's talk about that part of your company as well. How do you help companies there?
So, on the public relations side, there's really two kinds of communications. There's the corporate communications efforts, and that sort of, everything corporate related, corporate announcements, thought leadership, for example, awards, social media programming, etc. On the product side, for those companies that are fortunate enough to be at that stage, we're doing pre-commercial planning, which have a lot of the same elements, if you will, but it is a little bit different in terms of advocacy, thought leadership, non-branded awareness, social media pull-through, etc., medical meeting support. And on the IR side, I think that's also one of the differentiators is the investor relations and the public relations side within LHS is really an integrated team. It's not, we need to call the group over there, and that's a separate P&L. So it does help our clients quite a bit, in particular in this segment of the market where, cash is king and it becomes very expensive to have two different providers for each of those respective areas. So on the IR side, we're helping our clients think through public market strategies. We have a client, actually, this is a good segue back to your original question, is do companies come back? So we're working with a company right now who was a client of ours a few years ago, and they have actually filed to go public, and they're looking at a Reg A plus. So our IR team is helping them evaluate that process. And interestingly, they have a new CFO, and we're able to say to him, 3 years ago, we did the LHS immersion process, and he said, I've never seen that work. So we flipped that over to him. And, it's a little bit outdated, but the story is the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting though, whenever people put in the hard work kind of early and then they forget it, about it because, it's not top of mind to them, but it's good
Right.
whenever you can bring it back and you have the history for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So, whenever you kind of, pull together all of the pieces, how do you see that you first engage with companies? How does that initial sort of outreach happen, as well as the initial engagement, oftentimes with companies?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a pretty healthy business development effort and have a number of companies that inquire. And we're following up with those companies and talking with them to see whether it's the right time and the right fit. So, upon sort of agreement on that right fit is when we would propose our immersion process, if that makes sense, the company corporate deck, and then monthly programming from a PR or IR or integrated perspective.
And it seems like it's so important to have sort of, that's one of the reasons why I'd kind of asked about the off and on is that, one example for me in my consulting business is that I've seen with SEO that if I have somebody that's engaged in SEO and actually driving sort of, search engine optimization for my company, then it helps the consulting company overall rank higher and stays higher. If I do this on and off, what I've seen is that it quickly falls off, the search engine
Yeah.
optimization ranking, and then you sort of fall out of the line of sight of your potential clients. And so, to me, it almost feels like, communications would be one of those things where you really want to think long and hard about sort of what is my long-term strategy, and then like, how do I keep this going so that I stay in the eye of my potential customers, but also investors and others.
Right. And I think that's one of the challenges with a lot of these companies is that they worry about their time commitment to it.
Mm, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
So,
Yeah.
that's where, you really have to focus on, what matters most.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, for sure, base science and getting the cancer drug across the finish line, I know is critical, but at the same time, I mean, somebody's doing fundraising inside of the company. Somebody wants the message to be out, so that people will, want to sort of follow the company and, eventually either, invest in it as a public company or possibly acquire it. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Agreed.
So, how do organizations, target communications when your environment is just so complex? It seems like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you know, we have kind of a double-edged sword, right? We have the regulatory environment with the FDA, and then we also have the regulatory environment with the SEC. And it does become very complex. Just yesterday, we had a situation with the client is they're trying to figure out how best to communicate their data from an important clinical trial. And, there's all these questions about, can we embargo that information and bring people over the wall the night before we release the next morning? And it becomes very complicated. Those decisions, that advice becomes very not only important, but as the agency recommending it, you want to make sure that you've got it right.
Absolutely. And then, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing today?
Well, the biggest challenges, as everybody I think is well aware, is where we stand, from an overall economic standpoint, but in particular our sector and how that fits within the overall economy. And I think, over the past years and past economic downturns, we've weathered the storm. I think that there's some people that think that this storm may be a little different. And I think the difference today versus, prior storms is that we have many more companies, and all of these companies are fighting for the same capital. That being said, we know that innovation wins.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, if I were to go back to bio this year, so that my unfortunate bio story is I flew there, um, was ready to go to the conference and essentially went and took my COVID test and found out that I had COVID. It was non-symptomatic COVID.
Oh, no.
So yeah, exactly. Traveled to the conference ready to go and everything else. However, I got to spend a lot of time on the phone with people that were there and got just some great, insights in terms of investments and things like that.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I know was said to me repeatedly is, look, we'll probably see, larger requests, but we will also, see less of them at the same
right.
time. And I think that's played out as well as you watch some of the data out of Silicon Valley Bank and others that, it looks to me like, that's exactly what's happening in the space, is that we are still seeing a lot of companies get that innovation investment. However, there are companies that are, struggling and just may not be able to weather sort of the storm and stay the course.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
yeah,
Well, it's always been a market of the haves and the have-nots, right?
right. Yeah. And
So
you're
that
definitely
that
seeing that play
that
out.
song continues for sure.
Yeah. And then where do you think the biggest opportunities are in life sciences?
From a therapeutic standpoint, or what?
I think in general, I mean, either technology or therapeutics or, yeah, what are you seeing?
Yeah. Um, I think medical technology um, in general is very interesting. I think that the sort of the old way of thinking about med tech being just devices or just diagnostics is definitely evolving. And so, you're seeing more companies sort of combine diagnostics, device, digital health, etc. And even, I was talking to a client yesterday, as a matter of fact, in the medical technology space. And I was mentioning that one of our other clients is also in the diagnostic space and just got a nice infusion of cash from Pfizer. So you're starting to see, you know, big pharma getting more engaged in digital health, diagnostics, etc. And he was quite surprised by that because to him, pharma and med tech are very different, and they are.
Yeah.
Yet, we're seeing more and more integration, more and more um, combinations, if you will, in broader thinking.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely seen investments from large pharma in personalized diagnostics, especially whenever they have a cancer drug that'll sort of, fall in
Right.
alignment with that and things like that. I've also seen them. I mean, the interesting thing, I think it's Pfizer, is that they have a diagnostics division as
Correct.
well, I believe. So,
Correct.
I mean, I think, there's lots of different ways that potentially they could be interested in different things that people are working on as well.
Agreed. Agreed. So that sort of ties back to, our earlier part of the conversation about visibility and communication and ensuring people understand what you do.
Right. And not getting so wrapped into the science that you can't tell your story. You got to go tell your story first, it seems, and then worry about the science and the details once people are at least initially
That's right. I mean,
interested.
we all know stories that, weren't necessarily the best science that have raised a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I just read somebody was mentioning Theranos in my news feed again today, and I was like, huh. And yeah, I mean, for sure, there are other companies as well, but I mean, at the same time, that one comes always instantly to mind to me as a company that's received a lot of money for very little results because of their good
Right.
story. So,
Right.
yeah.
And that gives I think the sector and the profession a bad name, actually,
Yeah.
because that's certainly not what we want. But I think there's a lot of good companies with good science, good clinical progress, but yet they have a hard time
Yeah.
communicating and
Yeah.
building the awareness.
It's
Yeah.
just an amazing time to be involved in life sciences. I know the companies that I engage with, sometimes they talk about, what specifically it is that they're working on. And sometimes it amazes me, just to hear the overall story of, how these things come together and, the impact that it could potentially have on the world. And so,
Exactly.
having a good communication story is absolutely critical to that. So there are three questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
Great question. um, what inspires me now versus when I started this business? I certainly enjoy the clients for sure, and what they're doing and helping to solve those complex problems. that they have. But my job now as an agency owner with a team of people is to make sure that the people that I have are successful in doing that. And so, what inspires me today is different than what inspired me when I started. And so it's really, building the team and making sure that we as a team collectively are successful in our mission.
Absolutely critical. Yeah. And I mean, good leaders, right, help to clear a path for their people. And that's what I hear in your answer as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
What concerns you?
What concerns me is what's happening economically. In particular, it's a global problem, obviously, but I think in particular in the U.S., the uncertainty, from a policy standpoint, the challenges that we continue to have in Washington, it doesn't seem to change that much. And post pandemic, there's just a lot more. There's a lot more poverty. You see a lot more homelessness in some of our key cities, for example. It's concerning for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I know as COVID hit here, I'm near Denver, Colorado. So yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of people, just lose their homes and have to move to tent cities. And economically it is scary, given, one, that situation, but two, sort of the next wave of the economy just isn't there to support, recovery either of, those people, as well as, just making sure that people are economically safe in general.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, there certainly doesn't seem to be, at least yet, the lack of job opportunity, right? We still hear about, you know, different companies, whether that be in retail or food and beverage or whatever, they can't get the right dedicated workforce. So it just seems that COVID in general has had, not just economic ramifications, but mental health ramifications that don't allow those people to be able to get back to where we were.
Absolutely. Last question. What excites you?
What excites me is, I guess, staying in the bubble of the sector, that the energy and being part of what's possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. And Donna Lavoie, thank you so much for being a guest on the Life Science Success Podcast. I've greatly appreciated our conversation.
Thank you, Don. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.